temper, I'm confident in myself. That's what I'm saying. It's not about how he is. I just really like, I've got
Very first times at a face-off right here.
Just looking up at Daddy there and just seeing, you know, how big he is, and just my eyes were kind of going into his nipples and stuff, which I kind of liked. And then basically I was just like, whoa, he's big in that. And then, yeah, I can't.
Him in person.
I want that chain.
Okay, what were you?
Shit's dancing. That chain is dancing. You know what I mean? I'm like, give me that.
We going to war, baby. This 50 cal's going in your head.
Perhaps the chain on the line.
I'm gonna come to fight, and by the way, there's no like stuff in the contract that says that I can't do this. I'm gonna come to fight, you know. So face, I'm gonna break his body up. I'm gonna stomp all over him. That's my mentality, right? That's a fighter's mentality, and I know what's in my heart. I know what's in my mind, and I'm here to compete. I'm here.
The boxing world of late 2025 had evolved into a spectacle where digital buzz, championship lineage, and streaming dominance converged in a way that no traditional fight had seen before. In the midst of this whirlwind stood a single, impossible headline: Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua, billed as Judgment Day on December 19 at the Kaseya Center in Miami. It wasn't just another pay-per-view. It was the climax of a chaotic quarter that began with a canceled exhibition, ended with a legal maelstrom, and finished with the ultimate clash of a celebrity fighter and a two-time unified world champion. The journey to that fight began with a planned showdown that had been the talk of the sports world in early 2025. Jake Paul, the social media phenomenon who had been training in the cruiserweight division, was set to face Gervonta Tank Davis, the lightning-fast WBA lightweight champion. Their bout, slated for November 14th, promised a David versus Goliath story, a 200-pound influencer against a 135-pound master of speed and technique. The marketing narrative framed Paul as the Titan and Davis as the killer, a modern inversion of the classic myth where strength met skill. However, as the date drew near, the foundations of that event began to crumble. In late October, a civil lawsuit from Davis's former partner, Courtney Russell, flooded the Miami-Dade County Court with allegations of battery, aggravated battery, false imprisonment, kidnapping, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit detailed violent incidents allegedly occurring in a strip club setting, a parking garage assault, and even explicit threats to kill. A restraining order was immediately issued against the boxer, and the police opened an active investigation. The scandal erupted into the media, casting a shadow over any event that could be associated with Davis. For most valuable promotions, the parent company of the bout, the timing was catastrophic. Unlike traditional pay-per-view networks, Netflix, a mainstream streaming giant, operates under a stricter corporate image policy and cannot afford the reputational damage of broadcasting a fighter embroiled in serious domestic violence allegations. On November 4, the promotion announced the cancellation of the Paul Davis exhibition, citing responsibility and the need to protect the interests of all parties involved. Jake Paul, never one to shy away from a fight, took to social media, condemning Davis with harsh language and apologizing to the Undercard fighters whose incomes vanished overnight. The cancellation had ripple effects far beyond the headline. Undercard fighters such as Alicia Baumgardner, the undisputed super featherweight champion, and MMA legends Anderson Silva and Tyron Woodley found themselves in a financial crisis. The promotion faced mounting pressure to either reschedule the event or find a replacement that could match the drawing power of Davis. They decided to keep the Miami venue, pushing the date to December 19, and set out to find an opponent who could justify the delay and attract global attention. Enter Anthony Joshua. By late 2025, Joshua's career had taken a dramatic turn. A former world champion, he had suffered a devastating loss to Daniel Dubois at Wembley Stadium in September 2024. Dubois landed 79 punches compared to Joshua's 32, with a connection rate of 40% versus 27%. The defeat was not just a loss, it was a public humiliation, a statistical nightmare, and a blow to Joshua's legacy. In the wake of that defeat, Joshua was looking for a way to rebuild his standing and earn a substantial payday. The opportunity to face Jake Paul, a figure whose fan base could bring unprecedented viewership, presented itself as a perfect fit. Joshua's willingness to step into a bout that many would deem a mismatch was rooted in a combination of professional setbacks and financial incentives. The fight promised a chance to regain dignity, re-establish championship aspirations, and secure a lucrative payday from a global streaming platform. For Jake Paul, the matchup was an escalation in risk and prestige. For Joshua, it was a calculated gamble to return to the spotlight. The decision to replace Davis with Joshua was not made lightly. Matchmakers weighed the weight disparity, the historical significance of Joshua's title reign, and the commercial appeal of both fighters. They also considered the broader economic impact of Netflix's growing investment in live combat sports. By positioning the fight as Judgment Day, they framed it as a defining moment that would test the limits of both men, both in the ring and in public perception. Behind the scenes, negotiations involved complex weight stipulations. Joshua, normally fighting in the heavyweight division, would need to cut weight to meet Paul's cruiserweight limit of 200 pounds. Conversely, Paul would likely maintain his usual weight class, creating an unusual scenario where a two-time champion would step down in weight to face a celebrity fighter. The logistics of such a matchup required meticulous planning, medical clearances, and the assurance that both fighters could perform at their best without compromising health. The broader implications for the sport were profound. The fight highlighted how streaming platforms like Netflix could disrupt traditional broadcasting models, bringing high-profile fights to a worldwide audience and creating new revenue streams. It also underscored the fragility of event planning in an era where legal controversies and public image can derail even the most meticulously organized cards. Moreover, the bout served as a case study in how legacy fighters can reinvent themselves through unconventional matchups, while celebrity fighters can leverage their platform to enter the sporting arena in unprecedented ways. As December 19 approached, anticipation built on every channel. Fans debated whether Joshua could withstand Paul's raw power, whether Paul could outsmart a seasoned champion, and what the outcome would mean for both careers. The fight promised to be more than a bout. It was a convergence of two distinct worlds, a clash of legacy and celebrity, and a testament to the evolving nature of modern boxing. The stage was set, the weight limits confirmed, and the narrative had been fully written, leaving only the ring itself to decide the next chapter in this extraordinary saga. The aftermath of the Dubois loss had left Anthony Joshua adrift, a heavyweight king reduced to a cautionary tale of unfulfilled potential. The brutal knockout in the fifth round had not only ripped his title aspirations, but also rattled his confidence to a level where he stared down the mirror, searching for an anchor in a sport that thrives on psychological resilience. Observers, journalists, and fans alike whispered that Joshua seemed mentally bruised, his once thunderous combination stuttering, his gaze haunted by the weight of past failures. When the press asked him about the future, he offered a sparse, almost resigned reply. "I need to realign, focus. This isn't just a fight, it's a reset." In that fragile limbo, the Jake Paul offer emerged as a golden parachute. For a fighter who had just tasted the bitterness of defeat, a 9-figure payday for a single 8-round bout offered a financial safety net. It was also a chance to re-enter the spotlight, to prove, even if briefly, that he was still a threat in the ring. Eddie Hearn, Joshua's promoter, framed the match not as a battle of equal skill, but as a strategic execution. "We got an offer. How can we say no?" Hearn said, acknowledging the enormity of the deal. He portrayed the fight as a way to bring Joshua back into public view, to reintroduce his brand to a massive Netflix audience in the United States, a market that had proven stubbornly resistant since Joshua's loss to Ruiz. For Paul, the stakes were less about legacy and more about legacy building through spectacle. The 2024-2025 campaign had been a carefully curated mixture of nostalgia and stepping stone wins. His bout with 58-year-old Mike Tyson was a commercial triumph that yielded 65 million streams. Though it was a snooze fest for purists, it proved that Paul could headline a mega event. Next, facing former middleweight champion Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. gave him a legitimate win over a former world champion, a win that mattered to critics. Each victory added a brushstroke to his brand, a narrative that he was a bona fide contender, not just a YouTube star. The looming Joshua fight was the next logical escalation in that narrative. The contract itself was a tightrope walk. Joshua, a heavyweight accustomed to fighting above 250 pounds, was forced to come in at no more than 245 pounds. A cut of 7-8 pounds, whether water or muscle, could influence punch resistance and stamina. Yet Eddie Hearn dismissed the risk as work to do. Meanwhile, Paul would bulk to 225 to 230 pounds, a significant departure from his usual cruiserweight 200-pound limit. The rapid weight gain carried its own perils, potentially compromising cardiovascular endurance. Still, the structure of the bout, 8 rounds of 3 minutes, standard 10-ounce gloves, fully sanctioned, favored Joshua's superior conditioning while giving Paul a manageable distance. Behind the scenes, Saudi influence loomed. Turki Al-Sheikh, the chairman of the General Entertainment Authority, publicly endorsed the fight. He saw in Joshua a weapon against the perceived headache of influencer fighters. A brutal knockout would elevate Joshua's value for a future super fight in Riyadh, a city eager to host boxing's biggest names. Al-Sheikh's endorsement signaled that Joshua would not be ostracized from future serious bouts, alleviating concerns from traditionalists who feared the match would tarnish his reputation. The undercard was crafted to appeal across demographics, a mosaic of narrative threads that compensated for the cancellation of a high-profile match with Davis. The co-main event pitted super featherweight champion Alicia Baumgardner against Layla Bodan, a fight that pushed the envelope for women's boxing by adopting 12 rounds of 3 minutes. Baumgardner's advocacy for equal rule sets and a higher knockout potential positioned the bout as a statement of progressive values, amplified by the global Netflix audience. Meanwhile, other fights on the card balanced excitement with legitimacy, ensuring that the entire event resonated with both traditional boxing fans and a broader entertainment audience. Psychologically, the Joshua-Paul dynamic hinged on a narrative of delusional optimism. Paul admitted the absurdity of the matchup, yet maintained that his athleticism and unorthodox style offered an edge. Fighting a smaller man is hard for a heavyweight because of the speed difference, he said, hinting at his willingness to exploit the pacing advantage. This self-confidence was mirrored in Joshua's own admission of a need for psychological realignment. The fight, therefore, was a collision not just of fists, but of mental fortitude. Joshua's mental exhaustion from Dubois was a vulnerability Paul could exploit. Paul's self-belief could, in turn, shake Joshua's resolve. The weight of history settled on Joshua's shoulders as the bell rang. His training camp had focused on re-establishing the rhythm that had once dominated the sport. Each jab, every hook, became a deliberate test of whether he could still land the kind of blows that once sent opponents packing. Paul, on the other hand, was not merely a fighter, but a provocateur. A figure who thrives on media attention and a penchant for theatrics. His decision to bulk up for the fight added an element of intrigue. Would the additional mass translate into power or into sluggishness? The 8-round distance gave Paul enough time to acclimate while still staying within a manageable scope for his conditioning. As the fight unfolded, the audience witnessed a spectacle that defied expectations. Paul's aggressive approach in the first few rounds caught Joshua off guard, his bulk now a double-edged sword that allowed him to close distance quickly. Joshua's conditioning shone in the later rounds, where the 3-minute format favored endurance. Yet the psychological battle continued off-screen. Paul's delusional optimism was tested against Joshua's mental bruises. Joshua's need to realign and refocus clashed with Paul's drive to dominate via spectacle. The Saudi endorsement added a layer of cultural stakes. A knockout would not only satisfy Al-Sheikh's appetite for a definitive victory, but also elevate Joshua's standing for future Saudi bouts. The weight of that decision rested on Joshua's shoulders, knowing that a single punch could dictate his path to Riyadh's grand stage. Meanwhile, Al-Sheikh's public support gave Joshua a safety net. A loss would not preclude him from future serious bouts, a reassurance that was hard to overlook for a fighter on the brink of a career-defining moment. Meanwhile, the Undercard's women's bout served as a quiet yet powerful counterpoint. Baumgartner's fight underscored the evolution of women's boxing, arguing that 3-minute rounds would normalize men's standards for women. This fight, amplified by Netflix's worldwide reach, pushed a progressive narrative, an effort to break down barriers and redefine expectations. In the end, the Jake Paul-Anthony Joshua fight became more than an 8-round bout. It was a convergence of financial strategy, psychological reset, cultural endorsement, and an undercard narrative that spanned across genders and demographics. Each element interwove, forming a tapestry that not only addressed the cancellation of the Davis match, but also pushed boxing into new realms of entertainment. The fight's outcome, whether it was a crushing knockout or a close decision, would reverberate beyond the ring, influencing Joshua's realignment, Paul's brand trajectory, and the broader dialogue about the place of influencer athletes in the sport. The narrative climaxed on a stage that promised to reshape perceptions, to spark conversations, and to leave viewers staring in awe at the sheer unpredictability of what can happen when a YouTube sensation steps into the ring to scare a former world champion. The night stretched beyond the glint of the main event. Below the colossal lights, a constellation of fights unfolded, each contributing a unique narrative thread to the tapestry of Judgment Day. The first undercard star, a bout that promised to ignite nostalgia for UFC fans, saw former middleweight titan Anderson Silva face off against ex-welterweight champion Tyron Woodley. It was more than a return, it was a reunion of legends who had once faced Jake Paul in different arenas. Silva's storied career, peppered with a controversial loss to Paul in 2022, made his return a touchstone for old-school MMA lore. Woodley, who had also tasted defeat at Paul's hands, stepped into the cage as a last-minute replacement, turning the match into a throwback to a time when grappling and striking met under one roof. Fans of the sport found themselves glued to the action, their collective breath held as the former champions traded thunderous exchanges, each punch a reminder of the raw skill that once defined a generation. Parallel to the adrenaline of Silva and Woodley, the card was rounded out by a fresh wave of talent. Prospect Avius Griffin, with his slick jab and relentless pressure, showcased why he's been touted as the next breakout star in the heavyweight division. His opponent, Kane O'Malley, demonstrated a ferocious combination of power and agility, delivering a fight that was as much about technique as it was about heart. These encounters were less about the headline names and more about the promise of the future. An unspoken acknowledgement that Judgment Day was not merely an exhibition, but a launchpad for the next wave of boxers and fighters. The blend of veterans and prospects added a layer of complexity to the event, painting a picture of a sport that honors legacy while actively cultivating tomorrow. The broadcast itself was a technological feat. Netflix, having learned from the buffering nightmares of its earlier Jake Paul vs. Tyson partnership, approached the livestream with a renewed focus on infrastructure. The streaming platform was tested at a scale unprecedented for a single fight, with millions of viewers across continents watching in real time. A single glitch could have rippled across the global audience, but the company's investment in more robust servers and real-time monitoring meant the fight proceeded without interruption, a silent testament to the platform's growing capability to handle high concurrency events. This success was crucial, as Netflix's future ambitions, ranging from NFL rights to NBA coverage, hinged on its ability to deliver flawless live content. The decision to place the fight on a subscription service rather than behind a pay-per-view wall shifted the economics of the event. Traditional gatekeepers of boxing's revenue model were bypassed, granting fighters like Joshua access to a broader audience. Viewers who might not have purchased a premium pay-per-view package became exposed to the spectacle, providing Joshua with a platform to expand his brand beyond the hardcore boxing niche. This strategy aligned with Joshua's realignment objectives, aiming to craft a persona that resonated with mainstream audiences while maintaining competitive integrity. The impact was twofold: increased visibility for the sport and a fresh revenue stream for fighters who could leverage subscriber numbers in lieu of gate receipts. Behind the spectacle, the fight's technical forecast painted a nuanced picture. Joshua's strategy hinged on his 6-inch reach advantage. By establishing his jab early, he could maintain distance, keeping Paul from engaging in close quarters exchanges. The jab's precision would disrupt Paul's rhythm, laying the groundwork for a decisive right hand or a powerful hook once the opening standoff was broken. The plan was clear: control range, accumulate damage, and finish before Paul could muster the momentum to capitalize on his size advantage. Paul's counter strategy relied on chaos. He had to bypass the jab, slipping into openings for his overhand right, a punch that, if connected, could knock Joshua down or even out. Psychological warfare was also in play. Paul's brash confidence and delusional optimism could unsettle Joshua's focus, exploiting the older champion's recent mental fatigue after bouts with Dubois. Stamina presented a double-edged sword. The 8-round distance, while short for many fighters, placed significant strain on Paul's bulked frame. The 245-pound mass demanded oxygen, and as the fight progressed beyond the 4th round, his output would likely wane. Joshua, a former Olympic athlete known for superior conditioning, was poised to capitalize in the latter half. He could press the tempo, exploiting Paul's slowing defenses with a barrage of combinations, potentially securing a stoppage. The analysis concluded that a victory for Joshua via knockout or technical knockout was the most probable outcome, likely occurring between rounds 3 and 5. Betting odds reflected these dynamics. The spread and moneyline positions mirrored the perceived mismatch, with Joshua as the heavy favorite. Yet the psychological edge remained the great equalizer, a factor historically problematic for Joshua when facing a chaotic opponent. The narrative culminated in a referendum of sorts. If Joshua prevailed, it would signal the restoration of order in a sport increasingly swayed by viral fame. Conversely, if Paul claimed victory, it would herald a seismic shift, pushing boxing into an era where entertainment and skill intersected in unpredictable ways. As the lights dimmed on the undercard, the world settled into anticipation for the main event. The undercard's blend of nostalgia and future promise, Netflix's flawless broadcast, and the technical strategies crafted for each fighter all converged to make Judgment Day more than a single headline match. It became a live, global dialogue about the nature of sport in the age of streaming, the clash of old expertise with new media, and the unpredictable dance between physical prowess and psychological daring. This was a night where every punch, every strategy, and every stream quality contributed to a story larger than the sum of its parts. A story that would ripple across fan bases, platforms, and the very definition of what it means to be a champion in the modern world.
Jake called me directly. He called me. He didn't call my team. Jake called me. I said, okay, no problem, no problem.
Easy money.
Not easy money. We'll see. I'll let you.
In reality, it shouldn't go ahead. It shouldn't go ahead. There's no reason for it to. If you're a commission and your job is to look after the fighters, make sure they're medical.
He's laying on the canvas.
Holy ass. Jake Paul has shocked the world. He's done it again. He's done the unthinkable. He's done the impossible. And that's a
Couple months. In the darkness, in secret.
No, it's not a secret.
Are you sparring with Usyk?
No, I don't spar with Usyk.
Okay.
Usyk's, he's training somewhere else at the minute, but he's been in